Hey guys, how's it going? Josh back again with another Retro Redux, and today we're gonna talk about arguably the most movie of all time. Yes, today on the Retro Redux we're gonna talk about Elektra. I was originally going to review something good like X-Men 2 or maybe continue the MCU series that I started with The Incredible Hulk, but since it's been all but confirmed that Jennifer Garner is returning as Elektra in Deadpool and Wolverine, I decided to finally give this movie an actual watch. Before this, I thought maybe Garner could redeem her Elektra appearance in the Daredevil movie and get me excited for the next time we see her. She doesn't. This is also like the first movie I've ever reviewed in the Retro Redux that I literally didn't know anything about it other than it being a sequel to Daredevil. There were like no memes or anything about this movie, no special appearances in any other video essays I've seen or anything like that. And to be honest with you, there's no revisionist history fan base for this movie like there has been for other bad movies. Like seriously, I've been watching superhero movies since Spider-Man by Sam Raimi, and for the past 5 or so years there's always been revisionist history on every bad superhero movie since the beginning. I'm talking about from Daredevil to Fantastic Four to BVS and even Suicide Squad. No, not that Suicide Squad, this Suicide Squad. Now, I have to give credit where credit's due. Unlike most superhero movies at the time where maybe they alluded to other characters existing in their universe, this is the only movie around this time period that actually acknowledges a previous film despite using a new main character. So technically, this is one of the first iterations of the MCU on the big screen, not just in my head canon, like how I was like, oh, Ang Lee's Hulk could fit in the same universe as Sam Raimi's Spider-Man, and you know, maybe even Fantastic Four could fit in that same world. No, this is definitively in the same universe, and I guess that's kind of cool. Oh yeah, and you know, when I thought back to this movie, there was a scene I saw later in the movie that reminded me that I allegedly snuck into the theater to watch like 5 minutes of this movie when it originally came out, because me and my uncle and my cousin were actually waiting for the movie we wanted to see at the time.
Oh, that's hot. That's hot.
And we had some time to waste before that movie started, so we snuck in here and saw a little bit, and yeah, I think it kind of showed me why I avoided this movie for so long, but also you know, we'll get there. So yeah, going back to it, I'm not really a fan of the Elektra character, like, at all. She's probably one of my least favorite comic book characters that I've seen, read, and watched. I haven't really liked too many stories including her. I didn't really like her appearance in the Ben Affleck movie, didn't like her appearance in Daredevil season 2, and she's one of the worst parts of the Defenders show on Netflix. She's also probably, if I'm remembering correctly, my least used character in Marvel Ultimate Alliance, which was like my official introduction to the Marvel characters and stuff like that outside of the ones I already knew about. Let's just get into this movie. There's really not much to talk about. Thank God the movie doesn't really overstay its welcome, but the plot of the movie does begin a little late into its runtime, and it's actually a decent idea. It's just weird because we really don't get too much character development for Elektra to understand her motivations. I really was confused at first at like what were the stakes of this movie, but like I said, once the plot kicks in, you understand it. It's just kind of like you go with it. Essentially, as Elektra goes back to her childhood home for whatever reason, she meets her neighbors who are also revealed to be her targets. Unable to go through with the killing, she actually becomes acquainted with them and eventually has to defend them from the Hand. If you know the Hand, they're like the evil ninja organization from Daredevil stories and Elektra stories, and to be quite honest with you, the worst part of those stories. I never really liked the Hand. They're like Marvel's version of the League of Assassins, and to be honest with you, their introduction of like the mystical dragon martial arts shit into the Marvel universe is always handled corny to me. The Daredevil show really is at its weakest when the Hand is at its most prominent, and that's also the case here. The way this film looks is weird. Certain shots are actually really stylized and inspired, very similar into the vein of Daredevil at its best, but also Catwoman at its worst. The lighting is just strange at times, which is hilarious considering how competent this movie will look in other areas. And there's also some funny looking moments in this movie, like when the team of villains walk into the boardroom. That shit is just comedy to me. Or this face that Elektra makes for some reason. Also, the fucking back and forth between the camera and her when she's debating on killing the family that she becomes acquainted with is, like, hilarious.
Careful, SpongeBob! Careful, SpongeBob! Careful, SpongeBob! Shut up, Patrick! Shut the fuck up!
And let's just get into the characters. First things first, we got the titular character, no pun intended, Elektra. I really don't understand her origin in this movie because if I remember correctly, she died in the last time we saw her, but now she was revived. I don't know if they like retrieved her body post the funeral or if they like I don't know. I don't get it. She's alive now, which is a thing that happens in the comics, so you know it's not like they just pulled it out of her ass. Like I said, I'm not too familiar with the Elektra character. I didn't know she had like premonition powers, which is partly why she's so good at fighting, and nothing cool is done with that power. There's never a moment where you're like, oh man, that was a really cool idea, or where it's like, hey, she could see stuff a little bit into the future, but there's never a moment where it's used directly to her advantage. It's always just like, oh, she's aware that she's about to fight somebody. Plus, all of the action scenes and the stunts are lame. You know, the slow-mo do them no favors either. They just look goofy and stupid. She also suffers from more of the same in this movie as she did from Daredevil. She's boring, and honestly, she just is disconnected from the rest of the film tonally. She also never wears her do-rag of destiny in this movie. This was the prime era of like movie studios either going all in on the comic look or being completely embarrassed by it and dressing the character down into street clothes or darker colors. But she does wear the red outfit in this movie, so it's not like they completely cheapened out. And to be honest with you, she just looks goofy. Like here, like when she's fully costumed, like why is she so stiff? Like they could have just got a stunt double to record it from, you know, reverse angle something. She also looks like Claire Redfield from the Resident Evil 2 remake at some point with a certain outfit. And you know, I'm just talking about the aesthetic, but like her character is just dumb. In fact, her arc is just non-existent. I don't understand how her arc really develops or how she becomes acquainted with this family. The interactions are almost autistic in nature and it doesn't really solve or change her weird behavior that she's displaying near the beginning of this film. She's still like an odd recluse for some reason. The other characters in this movie are literal doo-doo water. We get into Abby. She's the kid that is a part of the family that Elektra, you know, starts defending, and she literally just describes her own character bio from like the Daredevil wiki, and she's annoying the entire movie until she could fight all of a sudden, which turns out she's actually like the MacGuffin. She's like this raw untapped talent that could be utilized by the Hand and Elektra and Stick, and all these other characters have to defend her. Abby's dad, he might be the most worthless character in any movie I've ever seen, and I'm not kidding. I forgot his name, and he literally does nothing the entire movie. I don't even remember him getting hit or anything like that. Like he just kind of runs away. There's no romance blossoming out of this character and Elektra, even though they kind of hint at it and they kiss a couple times, because the lack of character in this movie already is frustrating. The idea that there was supposed to be a romance here is insane to me. Somehow the romance in Daredevil is actually 10 times better than it is in Elektra. And then there's Stick, who's just there, I guess. I mean, he does do some things in this movie, but his blind man performance really isn't that impressive, especially even after, you know, the Netflix show. Seeing Stick and Matt Murdock's performances by their respective actors are really well done, and even Ben Affleck's blind performance in his movie is 10 times better than this. The lack of Daredevil references in this movie does bother me, especially because Stick supposedly also trained Daredevil in this universe, but to be honest, that's the least of this movie's issues. And then there's also Elektra's friend, who's like a bounty hunter, who I don't know, I think the romance aspect in that character was better. He actually did some things, but in terms of his skill level, he's clearly out of his depth in comparison to all the other characters in this movie, including the daughter. Then we have the villains in this movie. Yeah, Master Roshi, I guess, sends out his son named Kiryu. I'm not familiar with this character. Like I said, I'm not really into Daredevil's Hand aspect of his lore. Same thing with like Elektra as a whole. I'm not really into that. So if this is like a major character, I don't care. He really has no character. He's just focused assassin guy with a team of colorful characters, which to be honest, his team is actually kind of cool for the most part. They all have cool aesthetics, I guess. They're all types, but there's never a moment where they're developed by any means. They're all just like bloodlusted people. And then there's one called Typhoid, who was actually the character I saw in the scene when I allegedly snuck in the theater to see this movie a little bit, and it awoken things in me. And much like her friends, her death is hilarious. Kiguru's death is also hilarious to look at. If there was any direct way to fix this movie, it would just be to make a different movie. I don't know who this was for, and to be honest with you, I could completely understand why, you know, people say that this and Catwoman are like the Hardy brothers of destroying the chances of women-led superhero movies at the time, because it wasn't like women-led action movies weren't successful. We had stuff like Resident Evil and Underworld and even the Kill Bill movies around this time that were super successful and influential for its time. So it wasn't just like action movies with women weren't successful. We still had Salt and a bunch of stuff after these movies. It was just women-led superhero movies were just put on the shelf, as opposed to more prolific characters, more popular characters like, you know, Wonder Woman getting a movie, or even a spin-off character from the X-Men movies like Mystique, something like that. Instead, we got Elektra, and I really don't know why. This movie is bad. Unlike, say, Catwoman or even its predecessor, Daredevil, there's nothing entertaining about it, truly. It's just a movie that begins, it goes on for a little bit, and it ends. Now, if you're a fan of this movie, please let me know in the comment section why, and I'll see y'all in the next Retro Redux. Bye-bye.